Thank you, Mr. Gupta, for a very brief and all introduction of mine. This is the all introduction which I have as on date. The best part is that I am a member of the institute as well. I thank the Institute of Company Secretaries of India for giving us at NSDL this opportunity to present on e-voting. Basically, the system was started way back for postal ballots, and with this new Companies Act coming in line, it has been made mandatory for all the listed companies and a class of companies wherein the shareholders are more than 1,000. And it has come not only for postal ballots, it has come for all the general meetings as well. So it's high time that all the companies are now scheduled to go in for AGMs, and all the companies which are listed companies are now required to give this kind of a platform to all the investors. Today my focus would not be much on postal ballots, but the focus would be much on general meetings. Although the system remains same, technically there is no difference between a postal ballot e-voting system and then general meeting e-voting system. Only thing is the timelines have changed, but the focus would be more on general meetings. First of all, I would like to start with sections, although you are more adept than me in these sections, but how we have tried to utilize these sections and tame these sections into our system, we will try to understand. Section 108 tells about e-voting and poll. Then section 110 tells about postal ballots. Ministry of Corporate Affairs actually invited NSDL in 2011 to set up a platform of e-voting. Before 2011, there was a platform already in place for e-voting, which was being handled by the other depository. There were certain features which were not available at that point of time, so MCA invited NSDL to develop certain features which we are going to anyway share. After the implementation of these features, the postal ballot e-voting started to happen. Prior to that, the e-voting was not happening, prior to 2011. So what is actually the law as on date? Every listed company or a company having not less than 1,000 shareholders to provide the facility of e-voting. E-voting to remain open for not less than 1 day and not more than 3 days. E-voting to be completed 3 working days. This is actually 3 days prior to the date of general meeting, but somewhere in the rules for the scrutinizer it is written that it should be 3 working days. So by inference we are inferring that e-voting needs to be completed 3 days prior to AGM, but for the scrutinizers to prepare the report, it is 3 working days prior to AGM. So from that inference, we can take this also. Vote once cast by shareholder will not be allowed to be changed. So what we do, in e-voting platform, we block the system once the e-voting happens for any shareholder, and once the e-voting deadline date comes, and the e-voting end date comes, we block the whole system for that company. The portal where the votes are cast to be blocked, and at the end of the voting period, scrutinizers to unblock the votes in presence of at least 2 witnesses within 3 working days from the date of conclusion of e-voting. Scrutinizers to prepare the report. Now this report, as per rules, it is to be prepared in the form MGT 13. This is the combined consolidated report which needs to be prepared by the scrutinizer. Now we will go back to the background of e-voting. How did it start? MCA even authorized NSDL prior to our developing this e-voting system. In May 2011, MCA authorized us. In July, we developed our system, and then there was a requirement to obtain an STQC certificate. This STQC certificate NSDL obtained in January 2012 because this had to be obtained from the government agencies, and they needed to audit the systems of a private company. NSDL being not a government company, so they were not also very sure about how to audit the systems and architectures and infrastructures of NSDL. So they took around 6 months from there, and after that we started our e-voting portal in 2012. So as on date, around 130 to 140 companies have done e-voting through NSDL on 180 occasions. Roughly few companies have done twice or thrice for postal ballots. AGM e-voting has not happened much as of now. Since April it has become mandatory. So in May only few companies had their AGMs and they did e-voting. So who are all the entities which will be joining NSDL in this whole system? One would be the RTA, one would be the shareholder, custodial or mutual funds, and one would be the scrutinizer. These all business partners entities will join NSDL platform through their different logins. Now the registrar and transfer agent or the company we say has a digital signature through which they will log in. They do not have any password based user. So they need to have mandatorily a DSC, which we will map in our servers at NSDL and its central server. Then shareholders will have their passwords, and scrutinizer also has their digital signatures which need to be mapped in our system. Then the company, to complete the formalities for availing e-voting services, the first and the foremost formality would be entering into an agreement. This would be a tripartite agreement. This agreement would be between you as a corporate, between the registrar and the NSDL. So 3 entities will be involved. This would be a tripartite agreement. Only for the companies who do not have an outsourced registrar agency, they may have a bipartite agreement. So this tripartite agreement would be in triplicate. One copy will be kept by you and one with us and one with the registrar. Generally what we have seen is that once the company has outsourced the activity to the registrar, the logins and everything and upload and downloads are being done by the registrar. 95 to 99% cases, above 95% cases we have seen that everything is being done by registrar only. Even the company can do that, but the file formats and everything, the registrar is well adapted with uploading and downloading in file format, so it's always safe and fast from the registrar's point of view, because masters are also being maintained by them only. So BenPOS which we are giving to them, physical master is the registrar and the file formats are also with them, so they can create a digital signature and then they can upload the files. Then company to intimate details to the scrutinizer, details of e-voting and what are the rights, means one vote, one share, one vote. These are the details which you need to pass on to the scrutinizer also. What would be the e-voting cycle, when the cycle will open, when the cycle will close, what would be the end date, and what would be the result date, then how much time is required for preparation of reports and uploading on the website. See how the system starts, I will come to that first and then we will go back. This is how the system looks. This is a separate portal altogether for e-voting. This is not the main NSDL website. We have created a separate website, evoting.nsdl.com. On this, if you will go, you will find 4 logins. One is of the shareholder, one is of the RNT agent, one is of the scrutinizer and one is of the custodial. Now we will go one by one in each and every login and try to see how this functions, the system functions. The first login will be done by the registrar or the company as the case may be. They will enter their user ID, they will enter select their digital signature, and then this would be the page which will open. It will have 3 options. One is e-voting, one is user profile and one is the news and results. The first and foremost activity which would be done by the registrar is registering your e-voting details. In this, they will select the company, the e-voting start date, the e-voting end date and the result date. Then they can also upload the one shareholder resolution file. This will be a PDF file, this can be a doc file also. After this upload, they will have to add individual resolutions. These 2 kinds of phenomenon are being given for the people, like if an investor wants to download the whole shareholder resolution file and want to read together with the explanatory statements, they can download it. Or there may be a set of investors who do not want to get into all the resolutions and read all the explanatory statements. They can just roughly see the heading of the resolution and they can do the voting. So these 2 files they can upload the registrar. Once this file is uploaded, an event number is created, e-voting event number. So this is in short form is event number. This number is very important from companies as well as scrutinizers point of view. Now the registrar is required to upload the shareholders master. The shareholder master is as on the date of record date. The rules clearly prescribes that the investor who is an investor in demat form as well as in physical form or as on the record date will be given an option to cast electronically the vote. So as on the record date which has been decided by the company, the master of physical investors as well as CDSL and NSDL BenPOS master you can take. combine that data, the registrar will upload that data to NSDL website. So all the investors who have valid email IDs, we will be sending the user IDs and passwords plus your notices through email to all these investors that NSDL will be sending. The people who do not have any email ID or whose email ID gets bounced will be sharing the data of user IDs and passwords with the registrar, and the registrar will then print the user ID and password on the notices and they will dispatch it. We will take it in a lengthier manner. So this is how the shareholders file will get updated in the system. Once they update the shareholders file, a process ID is generated. This one, the process ID is generated. Now for a shareholder through their own, for a registrar through their own login, they may be a registrar of different companies. So for each company an event number has been created. So they can always click on that event number and they can modify the details of the resolutions. If any semantic changes have to be done, see if a registrar has uploaded a file of resolution and before the e-voting start date, any small changes needs to be done in the resolution or e-voting cycle or something like that, any semantic change they can do and they can click on the e-voting event number and then they can modify the details. They can also upload their contact details. The company may like to give a specific contact detail or an email ID for e-voting purposes. So any investor who want to contact the company, they can contact through, and this is a common screen for all the logins, means shareholder as well as the registrar as well as the scrutinizer. Then there will be a login of shareholder. The shareholder, once they receive the email IDs, user IDs and passwords through emails or physical notices, they will log in. On first login, they will change the password, they will create a security question. Once they do that, an IP mapping is being done by NSDL. This IP mapping ensures that the investor later on comes to you and says that I have not logged in. So we can always go back to the investor that this was the PC from where the login was done, and it's up to the investigating agencies now to investigate. So this change of password and creating a security question does the IP mapping, which was not there previously. So this has been brought up by NSDL. So they will see the e-voting of the companies with whom he is a shareholder. So if in his Demat account there are shares of 10 companies and all the 10 companies are going for e-voting, through their account they will be able to log in and check for all the companies which are doing e-voting, and this user ID and password is valid for whole life. So it is not required to get different user IDs and passwords for different Demat accounts. So for one Demat account, one user ID and password. Maybe they may be having 100, 200, 300 company shares. So each and every company which is going for e-voting, they will be able to log in and see from this password only. So once they click, they will be able to download the shareholder resolution file from their own login if they want to read, or else they can always cast their vote, assent or dissent, and confirm the voting. Once they click on the confirm button, their vote is cast. They can always take a printout. Then we have created one facility for the investors. See, there would be so many investors who do not have any email ID in their system, in Demat accounts as well as in your physical master data. So what we have tried to do is that if an investor logs into NSDL system and he wants to update his mobile number, contact details and email ID for future references, so he can do that. Later on what will happen, for any other company which is going for e-voting, he is the shareholder, that company will not be required to send the physical notice because email ID has come into system through e-voting system only. So may it be that email ID has not been updated through physical master or through the Demat account, because there is a particular KYC which is required to be done at that point of time, and if the investor has not provided that, but on e-voting website if he has provided the email ID, it gets captured only for the e-voting system. So later on that user ID will be, email ID will be used by NSDL. News and results, basically the company can cast the results of the resolutions on this link, and the investors will be able to log in and see the results of the company and any communication which the company wants to make to the shareholders. They can do that. For the scrutinizers, once the scrutinizer logs into the system through their digital signatures, they will be able to see the same even number of which company they want to scrutinize, and on real time basis, once the investor casts the vote, on real time basis the addition of assent or dissent gets numbered in the scrutinizer's login. So the moment investor casts vote, it gets updated on the scrutinizer's login screen. So he will be able to see for all the resolutions whether there is an assent or dissent and how many shares have been for assent or dissent. Then if the e-voting has already started, after the start date of e-voting cycle, the registrar is not allowed to modify that. Only the scrutinizer has an option to modify the e-voting details. This would be a rarest of rarest chance, but it has happened that after the start of e-voting, due to some political scenario, some government company had to defer the e-voting. Only the scrutinizer was allowed to close that e-voting at that point of time. This was a rare chance, but it has happened with NSDL and one company previously. So we have given these options to the scrutinizer to close or even modify the details of e-voting. Then there is unique feature of custodial link which is available with NSDL. What happens is that if there are few investors which have given a power of attorney to some custodial houses, and these custodial houses cast votes in favor or against on behalf of the investors, then there are two possibilities. One is that in custodial demat accounts, the details of custodial company comes, not the investor, because they have given international power of attorney agreements and power of attorneys to these custodials. So the addresses and email IDs of all the custodial houses comes. So once we send the communication, they will receive 200, 500 emails for all the customers, because their email ID has been captured in the system. And these custodials will be required to log in that much number of times into the system. So if they are custodial for 500 clients, they will be required to log into the system 500 times and cast their votes on behalf of these investors. So what we have done, we have created a facility where they can bulk upload one Excel file, means there is a file format available, and then they can cast the votes on behalf of these investors through their own link. So these are the different logins which are available to the custodial house, wherein on behalf of mutual fund house they can also cast their vote. A bulk file they can upload. Then there are certain features available from NSDL point of view, that is single sign-on. ICICI Direct is one of the biggest demat account depository participant of NSDL as of date. Lakhs of demat accounts have been opened, and they proposed NSDL of a facility of single sign-off, wherein an investor, if it is an investor of ICICIdirect.com, having a trading account and a demat account with them, and if that investor happens to log in to their website, then also that investor will find an e-voting option. Without any user ID and password which has been sent by NSDL, they can log in into NSDL website through ICICI's website. So this single sign-off, even if the investor forgets the user ID and password of e-voting, they can come through, and there are few big broking houses and depository participants who are also lined up. Sharekhan is the next one which have already developed this system. So through their website, single sign-on, the investor can come to NSDL's website. Now, advantages for the companies: faster voting process, reducing the administrative costs, accurate counting of the votes, availability of voting details. Shareholders, obviously the shareholders now have an option of e-voting. They can always come into the system if they are not able to attend the AGM and cast through poll. Majority of the shareholders familiar with NSDL system, this was the first advantage. Facility of custodials and mutual funds, secured system means IP mapping is there. Facility to shareholders to print details of vote, they can always print that detail, and integration with other websites like we have said about ICICI. And these are the numbers. I think presentation is not too big, but the interaction would be large, because there are few areas wherein there are certain things which needs to be clarified. So if we can take the questions, if somebody has any question on e-voting per se on sections, I'll try to give answers for that. Yeah, please, sir.
If I've understood correctly, the system will be open for 3 days prior to it. What will happen in a hypothetical situation particular individual uses the e-voting system X minus third day, that is 2 days before the AGM, and then physically attends the meeting and participates in the voting there also. While you have said that e-voting, it will block once a person votes. He will not be able to cast the vote again. But then how do you reconcile the physical voting at the AGM and the e-voting together if there is a malafide intention particularly?
So see, this kind of an occurrence can occur at any AGM. The issue is that the e-voting download is available with the scrutinizer at the end of the date. The whole master download is available with the scrutinizer. Once sir is asking about e-voting per se AGM, not the postal ballot. So what he is asking is that as of now, 3 days prior to AGM, e-voting has to end. This is the minimum time period. It can end before that also. Now, on that day, the scrutinizer gets the whole download of all the e-votes cast for every resolution and what was the client ID, what was the folio number. With that, the scrutinizer gives the report to the chairman. That is required as per the rules. That the scrutinizer within 3 working days of the end of the voting needs to file a report with the chairman. If the investor comes personally, physically at the AGM and somehow he is being given that poll paper also and he files through poll, scrutinizer at the time of scrutinizing will always take that care that this person having this demat account number or folio number has already cast electronically and the vote casted physically can get negated. That is up to the company to see whether they will take the physical vote or they will take the e-vote. What has been precedence in postal ballot cases was that company was taking e-vote as the final vote. Maybe that physical vote had been given by the investor later on also. But the companies have taken e-vote on record. So that is what I am trying to say, that the law is not clear on to that. The companies have taken e-vote on record. That is what I am trying to say.
Is it not that this is physical one is the later one, therefore to be taken?
Sir, that is very subjective. The issue is that once the person has casted a vote, why should that person be allowed to cast on that vote once again?
No, you can't, in the big companies AGM, where there are 7,000 shareholders sitting, can you physically control a person who has already voted and is
No, sir, let him cast. I am not trying to say that do not cast. Let him cast. Once the report is with the scrutinizer of e-voting, the scrutinizer with the Excel file will be able to know whether this investor has already casted or not. It is not impossible. Correct. Which one? Yes. I think on the attendance slip it is written while yours. So once the investor comes back with the attendance slip, you can always check. And in MGT 12 now, this new MGT 12 which has come in, that is the poll paper, in that also that field is there. Yes. NSDL, yes. So what happens is that in my central server the DSC needs to get mapped. User ID he will select, DSC he will provide to us the print screen and we will map in the system. Then only he will be logging into our system. That will do now. That will do. He need not purchase a new DSC. The only thing is that DSC needs to get mapped in my system. That's the only. NSDL help desk is always there. Yes. I also said that for the companies who do not have any outsourced RTA, you need to enter into a bipartite agreement with NSDL. So you can always enter into a bipartite agreement, the company and the NSDL. Correct.
It means the company has to provide. It is mandatory for the company, but not for the shareholders
Correct.
of the company.
Correct.
It means they can deny for e-voting.
See, they may like to come on the AGM and cast through poll. See, it is mandatory on the companies to provide this platform, but the investors may cast electronically and may like to come physically in the AGM and cast through poll. So it's an option. So there are many investors who do not have any email facilities or e-voting or internet facility in remote areas, and they might like to come on the AGM. So they may cast through physical poll as well. No. Tripartite agreement is not a lengthy procedure. The only thing is that you need to finalize your schedule of events. For example, if your company is AGM, if I am talking about general meetings, not the postal ballots, if we go to the timelines with some example, so if your AGM is scheduled on 30th of August, for example, and 21 days notice anyways you have to give. So 30th of August minus 21 days, 9th of August we are here now. 2 days dispatch of notice period is required for dispatch of notice. So you come down to 6th or 7th of August. Prior to that, 5 to 6 days prior to that, you need to upload the master data. The shareholder needs to, the registrar needs to upload the master data on NSDL system. We will generate the user IDs and passwords. For 3 days, our server will try to send the user IDs and passwords to the email IDs which have got bounced. After 3 days, we will give the user IDs and passwords to the registrar of the investors whose email IDs are getting bounced. So, naturally, an advertisement in the newspaper has also to be given. Secondly, there are fine prints. For example, the notice of the AGM now needs to, the notice of the e-voting now needs to be delivered through either speed post or courier or registered post or email. And the annual report which anyways you are sending is by ordinary post. So, ma'am, not in all companies' cases. Not in. The only thing is that you need to take care of the costs then. So if you are sending the annual report through speed post, traditionally if you are sending through ordinary post, then always the courier cost will be higher or the speed post cost will be higher. So one thing is that you can do is that you can print the notice separately, not in the annual report, because the user IDs and passwords will have to be super printed on the notice itself. So if the notice is inside the annual report, we may not be able to super print the user IDs and passwords on the notices. So you need to detach one document, either the attendance slip or the notice outside the annual report. The best would be the notice, because notice anyways has to be sent through speed post. Attendance slip can always go along with the annual report. So the cost factor you need to take care of also.
What are the basis of NSDL charges?
So there are different charge structures depending upon the number of shareholders. It would be roughly starting from around, roughly in and around 1 rupee per shareholder. Per shareholder. Roughly, it may be lesser, it may be higher, but in and around 1 rupee.
What are the problems faced by these 130 or 140 companies which have used the e-voting facility? Whether there was any downtime or the system was not available to maintenance?
See, basically this system, the system is designed in such a fashion that this system doesn't has any EOD per se or BOD per se. This is 24/7 system. Unlike the depository system which has an EOD and BOD. Every day the trading happens, then settlement happens, and EOD and BODs. An investor can cast in midnight 12 also. Only one thing you need to take care is that on the end of the voting date, you can define a particular time, that till this time of the hour of the day you want to allow the investors to cast vote. At that point of time, our system will populate one button, authorized button. Till the time that time comes, authorized button will be disabled. After the time clicks, that button will enable and the scrutinizer will OK it. Then the e-voting will freeze. So even if, I am not aware about the downtime, but even if there is a downtime, so this is 24/7. So investor can cast any point of time.
Problems faced by this 130, 140 companies?
See what kind of, if you can be some specific.
Issues they have faced and how you resolved it?
Technically there is no issue. The only issue is relation to company's law, how would be the schedule of events decided, how will be the calendar decided, what would be the timelines. Means what happens is that now with this coming mandatorily to all the companies, what will happen, every company will have their AGMs in June, July. Every company will rush and every company will try to upload their data. So that is the biggest challenge. So we were trying to tell companies prior to this rules also that kindly sign the agreement, get yourself enabled in the system. It is free of cost. Doesn't have any cost to get yourself enabled in the system. Sign the agreement. Now signing the agreement may also take some time now. Means you will sign, your registrar will sign and send it to NSDL. So it's high time that you at least enable yourself in the system. Later on when the e-voting happens, it will happen now. So the only problem is the time criticality, aligning the things, and this is also first time for the NSDL to come up with this kind of structure apart from postal ballot. In postal ballot the window was getting open for 30 days. Now in e-voting it has to open only for 3 days or 1 day, depending upon the company, how do they want to take it. So the time is also very less. The reports have to be finalized. The scrutinizer have been given 7 days to finalize their report. So typically what will happen on the AGM date, there will be a master data of e-voting. Then the poll data will be available with the scrutinizer. The scrutinizer has 7 days to prepare the report and file with the chairman. And after those 7 days, within 2 days the result has to be posted on the website also. So maximum these are 7 plus 2 days, 9 days. Then if on the date of AGM the poll is being deferred for 48 hours, that is the law which says, so it can go up till 11 days also. So the timelines are not very huge. So you need to be aligned that way.
Is there any maximum volume which NSDL can happen at a particular point of time in terms of number of companies?
Sir, NSDL has been doing this since 1996. So the all data, settlement, every day it happens. So volume is not an issue with NSDL. Yeah. Sir, initially what happened was that SEBI circular came wherein the 500 top companies were required to go for postal ballot e-voting system. So all those were main companies only. So 130 companies which did it for postal ballot, all of them were main. Suzlon came, Reliance came, and then Nestle is the first company to go for AGM. On 12th of May, Nestle went for AGM e-voting. Prior to that, postal ballot e-votings have happened for all the companies. It is on our website. The list of companies which did e-voting, 130, 140 typically companies. The list is that way also we are transparent, means which were the companies, but the other depository has not casted that on their website. But we have given the list of companies which have already gone through e-voting through us.
The master has to be uploaded as of some recording.
Yes.
In case of companies, the recording starts just about 7 days or 10 days before the date of AGM. On which date?
See, what has happened is that if I am not wrong, stock exchanges used to say that within 30 days there cannot be 2 record dates, if I am not wrong. But for this time, for Nestle, it has happened. So with change of law, they have also changed. So it may so happen that the record date is 35, 40 days prior to the AGM, and for declaration of dividend there is a separate record date, and for allowing the investors to cast vote electronically there is a separate record date. This has happened. So with new law coming into the system, the exchanges have also allowed that. No, registrar are already geared up. They have been doing all the registrars. There are typically how many registrars in northern India? Would be around 12 to 13 registrars, not more than that. So they have already mapped their digital signatures and they are geared up. So NSDL team is always there, but data has to be uploaded by the registrar. So they know how to do it. They do n number of downloads and uploads in NSDL system every day. In NSDL mainframes, they do all the downloads and uploads every day. And with this e-voting system, there is no different file format from us. The file formats remain same as was in depository and I think in e-voting system as well. It is a simple file format. No sir, we do not require 6-7 days to generate the user IDs and passwords, but you require 3-4 days to get it printed on the notices. Our system will generate the user ID and password the same day the shareholder data is being uploaded. So if today morning the data is uploaded, till evening all the user IDs and passwords will get generated. Now 3 to 4 days your printer may take to print the user IDs and passwords on the notices itself and dispatch it. So I was telling that 6-7 days prior to that date you should upload that data so that we are able to give the user IDs and passwords to your printer as well. Yes, yes. You can typically take a Friday, because Friday BenPOS are always coming free of cost from both the depositories, and the master data is available with the registrar. So they can collect that data and they can take that record date and they can upload that file. Correct. The rules say that, no? The rules say that for e-voting, all the investors who are investors in physical and demat form would be given the option to cast their votes electronically. The rule says it. The record dates they have fixed. Now with this inference, we may also infer that at the time of AGM, if any investor comes and if he was not an investor at the date of record date, he may not be allowed. From this inference we are trying to say. For e-voting, there is a absolute clarity in the law. For e-voting, that as on the record date, the people who are shareholders are given a right to cast electronically. But if somebody sells in demat form and on the date of AGM he is a shareholder, he comes, then what will be the situation? The companies have taken, few companies with which we have spoken, they say that we have taken the record date and it will be final. And if somebody casts vote, we will negate it later on. And this is mentioned in the notices also. Yes, it's given in the rules itself. Yes, yes, yes. You are telling, asking about AGM, proxy. Huh? E-voting, anybody who has the user ID and password, if the investor wants to share it with somebody, how can we restrict? No, this will be once. What will happen is that once an investor has casted a vote and he has a user ID and password in our system, next year a company comes with an e-voting and this investor is a shareholder in that company, we will send one intimation through the notice that the same user ID and password which was shared with you at that point of time remains valid. So this is the intimation which we will be sending through the notices. That will be getting printed on the notices as well, the people who do not have any email IDs, and people who have email IDs, we will send it electronically. This intimation goes to the investor that the already user ID and password is valid for your this e-voting as well. Sir, literally or virtually you said show of hands has gone now. So if you have given a platform of e-voting, there would not be any parity if we go for show of hands. So how the votes casted, there will be in parity with the show of hands. So virtually show of hands has gone now. I think I have already given an answer to that. I said that basically inference is that for e-voting, the law clearly says that as on the record date, the person who was the shareholder is going to cast electronically. For electronic voting, the law is clear. But for the people who may turn up at the AGM and who may have obtained the shares later on, they can come and cast. From this inference, you can take that no, only the record date people will be allowed to cast in physical also. That is what I am trying to say. The law is not clear. You can take an inference from e-voting schedule, means the rules which have come up for e-voting as well. Notice has to get, see, what I am trying to say is that you need to mention it in the notice itself. But the issue is whether it is correct or not. So I am trying to say that taking an inference from erstwhile rules on e-voting, that a person who is a shareholder on the date of record date is allowed to cast electronically, but a person who may have obtained later on and comes down to the AGM physically, whether he will be allowed or not. So I am trying to say that we can take that mutatis mutandis here as well. So you need to mention in the notice itself that if anybody who is not a shareholder other than on the record date will not be allowed to cast vote. You may mention on the notice itself. Who is the shareholder on the date of record date? Login IDs and passwords will be generated later on. First of all, you need to settle the record date, fix the record date, you upload the data, then I will be able to generate user IDs or passwords.
There is no regulation in terms of gap between the AGM and the record date.
See, typically 21 days is the notice period and you need to send the notices prior to that, and the user IDs and passwords will get generated prior to that. So typically the record date would be prior to around 10 to 12 days or 13 days prior to the notice period first date. So you can take 35 days, 40 days prior to AGM.
So that is as per our convenience.
Yes, yes. Any Friday which, or means you can solicit always, Monday to Thursday always, but Fridays are generally convenient. Because on Saturday, Sundays the registrars can upload their file as well.
Can a company which has not appointed an RTA, can it give facility of e-voting?
Yes. Your login will be created on our website. As in company, yes. That is it.
Please contact NSDL.
So your logins will be created, otherwise the RNT's login will be created. That is the only difference.
A company can enter with a agreement with more than one agency who are
Yes,
providing.
yes, yes. But for one e-voting, they need to contact one agency. It would not happen that for same e-voting, you have contacted both the depositories and your e-voting goes parallelly with both the depositories. It will not happen. So at one e-voting, you need to contact only one depository. But if the Demat account is same, then one. If the Demat accounts are different, then two. But in physical, we cannot help. Yes, but in physical we cannot help because he may be having a folio in one company and he may be a shareholder with some other folio in some other company. We do not have any means to collect the data whether the shareholder is same or not. So in physical, n number of folios, n number of user IDs and passwords. But in Demat, one Demat account, one user ID and password.
In e-voting, whether there is any chance of invalid votes?
No. No, I think invalid vote would not be in e-voting, only in physical poll it may so happen. Invalid votes means.
So scrutinizer's physical location vis-a-vis the RTA's location is not important because scrutinizer can do it from his own office.
See, for postal ballots it may be important, but for general meetings it is irrelevant because scrutinizers are logging into their system through their own office, RNT through their own office, NSDL through our own office. But in postal ballots, if you say the resolutions are being passed through postal ballot, then in that case all the investors who have been sent user IDs and passwords, they may also like to cast physically and not cast electronically. Then the physical postal ballots needs to come to the scrutinizer or RNT office as the case may be. So there is a chance that both scrutinizer and RNT have a common office, but not in e-voting for general meetings. See, e-voting has, from e-voting system I am trying to say there is no difference. Only thing is timelines will change. The e-voting cycle has to be set up by the registrar. So if they set up 1 day, the e-voting will open for 1 day. If they set up for 3 days, it will be open for 3 days. And if it is a postal ballot, it will get open for 30 days. So e-voting cycle you have to set up and it will start functioning. So from technically NSDL point of view, there is no difference. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Correct. So you can devise in such a manner that if you have given a 21 days notice to the investors, you can start e-voting after 10th day and you may end up e-voting 7 days prior to AGM, so that you also have some time gap in between. So it is always possible. 3 days are the extended limits, but you can always prepone the e-voting cycle. The users will only be able to log in within those, see your e-voting details within those days only. Even if they receive the user ID and password prior to e-voting start, they will be able to log in but not see your e-voting details. So once your e-voting start happens, then only they will be able to see your e-voting details. Otherwise not. So you can always prepone or postpone as per your convenience.
In case of shares held by banks, financial institutions, mutual funds, they also do e-voting.
Yes, so that is what I was trying to say, that there is a custodial link in which mutual funds and custodials, if you will see the second bullet, custodials and mutual fund houses, they have also been given some separate link through their DSC. The last one was this only, the login for custodials and mutual fund houses. So they can always upload one file based on the votes to be cast for and against on, correct. Come again, ma'am? Yes, it is up to you. But what I am trying to say is now exchange have allowed 2 record dates, for dividend purpose separate record date and for e-voting separate record date. This has happened. So you may take so also. So for AGM, this was the first AGM which was held for Nestle. They have taken both the record dates separately. That Nestle would be knowing how. Correct. They had 2 interim dividends in between. Final dividend, they took a separate record date altogether vis-a-vis the record date of e-voting. They took separate record date altogether. And that was after the AGM they have taken the record date. 19th is the record date for the AGM has happened on 12th. 19th they would be having that record date after the AGM. Custodial is that if somebody has given a power of attorney to a custodial, or if some mutual fund house wants to cast votes electronically on behalf of the constituents, so in custodials, the people who have given power of attorney, in all cases what will happen, the user IDs and passwords will be sent on a particular email ID. Now on all the demat accounts which have been opened by custodials, the email IDs of custodials occurs. So once my system dispatches email IDs through email, user IDs and passwords through email, it will anyway go to the custodian only. So what will happen, they will have to log in n number of times to cast their vote on behalf of the investors. So we have given them a bulk upload facility. So they can prepare a file and then they can upload on one go. They need not log in n number of times. So if they are a custodial for 500 clients, they will be required to log in 500 times. So that we have done away with. That is the simple thing. That is not something which has come up, but this was required. Come again, sir? See, quorum, there is a provision of around 30 members if the company shareholders are more than 5,000, if I am not wrong. So the physically, the quorum should be present at the meeting. Yes, physically, personally, they have to be present as per the law. So that e-voting would not be counted for quorum, which we are trying to infer. E-voting is a separate thing altogether. It says, the law says, personally the people had to be present. So for the companies whose registered offices are very in remote areas, so it will be an issue to take 30 people over there and yes. See, quorum is not for voting. Quorum, an investor can ask questions also. Na? He has to be physically present there. So even if he has casted electronically, he can come and attend AGM. Even if he has not casted electronically, he can come and attend the AGM. So physical quorum has no relevance with voting, means in that perspective. See, e-voting's window once open, it's open na, in the system, technically. E-voting, we do not access to the e-voting happening because my officer is not authorized. Only the scrutinizer is authorized to check the data and the investor is casting vote. At that point of time, the registrar, even the registrar and the company will have no login to check what is the voting happening. The registrar and the company through their logins have no window to see what is the voting percentage happening. It's only the investor who is casting their votes and the scrutinizer who is viewing what is the voting being cast. So NSDL officers from back end do not log into the system and does that.
Once the e-voting starts, the scrutinizer can have an eye on how many are voting in favor and how many are
Yes, yes. List also. Yes. See what will happen to the scrutinizer if, for example, there are 10,000 investors and typically 100 investors cast electronically. First day, 20 investors casted. So based on the number of shareholdings, the data will flow. That how many has casted in favor and how many have casted against, but the data of actual investor, that who is the investor, how much is their shares, what is the demat account, what is the folio number, that we can always give on daily basis through email. But on the last date of the e-voting, a master download is available in their login itself, on the last date of the e-voting, that he can always download. Yes. That whole master data is available in their download in Excel format, so that if they want to check the details through find, they can do that easily. So scrutinizer can always look into it. Scrutinizer is given that data, not the company or the registrar. Scrutinizer is the only one agency which would be getting that data, who has casted vote in favor or against and who are the investors. So, though the registrar will upload the master file, so it's up to the company and the registrar what they are uploading. We are issuing the user IDs and passwords. So you need to take care of the master data first once you are uploading that master data. So you restrict the registrar to not to upload those few client IDs or folios wherein you feel that they are interested. So the scrutinizer will negate that. That is what I am trying to say. After that, once the e-voting has happened or the physical poll has happened, the report has to be prepared within certain days. So at that point of time, the votes can be negated as well. So scrutinizer point of view, the work is there because they have to see. It may so happen that an investor has casted for 3 resolutions, and if he has not casted for the 4th one in the e-voting, he may come up at the AGM and would like to vote for the 4th one. So it may so happen. So the scrutinizer will scrutinize that. Correct. I am telling that if you had 4 resolutions and he has casted for 2 and the voting has closed, and if he now wants to come and vote physically for the rest of 2 and he casts for 2, the report is with the scrutinizer, then you have to pre-decide during the notice itself what would be the fate of these resolutions or these number of votes which has been casted later on. Although the investor has casted for 2 resolutions and he has not casted for 2 resolutions in the e-voting cycle, and he now wants to come at the AGM and cast for the rest of 2, that you need to pre-decide during the dispatch of notice itself. No, not e-voting, physical poll papers you will be distributing, MGT 12 that you will be distributing there. That is what I am telling you, that you need to pre-print on the notice itself. Yes. Because things as of these areas are not clear. So the company need to take that stand, whether they will negate or not. Yes, ideally he should be, if he has not casted electronically on those 2 resolutions. E-voting is, that will be fine. That will be fine. So if e-voting has happened, it has happened. It might be a scenario that none of the investors cast electronically and people sitting there in physical, they cast through poll. So it can happen either ways. So it's up to the people over here.